My name is Zach Sargent, and I'm the Technical Marketing Engineer for Cloud Management at ServiceNow. Today, we're going to learn a little more about how to configure cloud management in the new Jakarta release and going forward. So in this tutorial, we're going to talk about cloud accounts. Cloud accounts are an abstraction that allows you to build a hybrid cloud based on accounts that you have with existing cloud services. So we're going to cover the big three: Azure, Amazon, and VMware, in that order, so decreasing in complexity, I suppose, and show you what it takes to get them hooked up. So we're going to start this on the credentials page. So there are three levels of what you need to do here. So at the first level, we need to get the credentials into the system. And I'm going to show you where to get those bits of credentials for each of these account providers. So we're going to start with Azure. As you can see, we have an Azure Service Principal entry as our credential type. And I'm going to call this Azure 1. Now the first piece we're going to need is the Tenant ID. So the Tenant ID, if you come out to Azure Portal, is something that you can get from your Active Directory. This Tenant ID field is actually the directory ID. So once this loads up and we go to Properties, you'll be able to see that. So Microsoft even provides a nice little click to copy icon here. So we're going to snag that, go back to ServiceNow, and drop it in there in the Tenant ID field. So these are blurred out because this is a live environment and I don't want you stealing my stuff. So I apologize for that, but you should be able to get the idea from what you see here. The second piece is going to be on the application, is the client ID. So the client is actually an application that we set up. So we have to register an app. So this app registrations under Active Directory is where we're going to go. Now, you may or may not have permission to create an application, register an application in Active Directory. If you don't, you'll probably have to work with an administrator of AD for your organization. But as it turns out, I do in this particular directory. So we're going to call this ServiceNow integration. The URL actually isn't used for anything here in this in our integration. So I usually put here the URL of the ServiceNow instance that I'm using, just because it's a little extra to tie it back. And then we'll create this guy. So now I have this application. If I go in here, I'm going to get that next piece. This application ID is going to be our client ID. Okay. And then finally, the key, the secret key. So once we come in here, we're going to call this ServiceNow 1, 2 years. And if we save this, it's going to give us the key value. So we copy that and then drop it in here. Okay, now we've almost completed what we need to do here for Azure. So the first level is just this credential. The second part is the service account. So I'm going to go to the service account. So under cloud, you can see that we're pretty empty here. So we're going to add a new one and call this Azure 1. Now the account ID is actually the subscription ID. So if we go back to this page, there's a couple of things that we need to do under subscription anyway. So we haven't tied our service principal to a subscription yet, or there are a registered application, which is becoming a service principal. So here, I'm going to take this top subscription. Maybe. Okay. And open that subscription up to where I can see the subscription ID. Again, copy, paste. Now, discovery credentials is going to be the credential that we gave it before. There's no data center URL for Azure. This comes in with VMware and other types of API calls that we do. And I'm going to submit this. Now there's another thing that we haven't quite completed for the subscription. So this access control IAM, we're going to go there. And we have to add our recently registered application as someone who can access and manipulate things in the subscription. So I typically pick the contributor role. Contributor or owner are just fine. And here you can see that we have our application from the directory. We select it. Now when I make API calls using that credential, it's going to come back and have permission to do things in this subscription. So there you go. So we've done the credential level. We just showed you the service account. Let's go to the upper level of the cloud account. Now, a cloud account is an abstraction that allows us to tie multiple resource types into a single cloud. So I'm going to call this Hybrid 1, Hybrid Cloud Account. Now from here, don't worry about what you pick first. You can always add more later. And the idea is if we've done everything right, when I hit this Discover Locations, it's going to go out to the Azure API and pull back the locations and the regions that I can talk to. So once I have that, I can select particular regions to be part of this account. So it limits choices in terms of what you can do inside of a cloud account. So it's an abstraction layer that puts up some fences and some guardrails around where people can do stuff. So in this particular case, because I know I'm moving in a particular direction for this hybrid cloud, I'm going to pick West US. And then lastly, I'm going to click Discover Now. So if I've done everything right, this should start to populate with the things that I have available to me in that data center. So I'm not going to wait around for that. Instead, we're going to go back down to the credential level, and I'm going to plug in AWS. We can come back to see that in a minute. So at the credentials level, again, we have a new AWS credential. And this one is a little more straightforward. So inside of the AWS console, I'm going to go to the IAM. So once I'm in the identity and access management here, I'm going to create my own user. Very similar to what I did before. Add user. Okay, and we're going to give this programmatic access. So this is similar to understanding that it's an API or a programmatic access like we did in Azure. Add user to a group. I already have an administrator group set up with the permissions that I want. So I'm going to add it to that. We're going to create this user. Again, sorry to be blurring things out for you, but this is a live environment. I'm going to show this key. Copy. And paste. Okay. Now we're going to go back up to the service account. If all you wanted to do was discovery these credentials in the credential table would be fine. It's only in cloud management where we start using them in a little more constructive way. Okay, so this account ID is the last bit of information that we need from Amazon. So if I come down here and I look at my account, I'm going to be given this, I think it's a 9-digit number. And I'm going to, that's our account ID. It's a more than 9-digit number. And just paste that in here. Discovery credentials have already been set up. Oops, not those. How about that one? Yes. I get a data center URL, data center type is AWS, and we submit. So finally, I'm going to go back to my cloud account. Now I can see in this account, once I go back here, the discovery is doing its job in finding the things in this data center for us. But I want to add a new data center as well. And we're going to go with AWS. I'm again going to pick West US for an experiment that I'm doing down the road. I want not that huge of a latency between all of these things. So we're going to pick US West 1. And I can discover it now. Again, I'm not going to wait around for this to go. So we're going to go on to our final cloud to set up, which is VMware. And we're going to start back at the credential table again. The new credential for VMware. So this is a base installation of VMware, and I haven't set it up with any Active Directory or other IAM integration. So you can probably guess my password on what that is. It's not very creative. So then we're going to go back to the service account level. Okay. Now here I do need the data center URL. And my drop down almost tricked me again, but and the data center type is going to be VMware vCenter. For this data center URL, there's a particular setting in vCenter. Just in the off chance that you don't know what it is, I'm going to show you where to find it. Some people change where that points. Usually to a different port number, but some people don't. So let's go check. All right, here's my vCenter web client. Once vCenter loads up, we're going to go into vCenter, or vSphere, I should say. Once the client loads up, and this is the same if you're using the desktop client. You need to go to this advanced settings under administration, and you can find the same information here. Okay, so under manage, settings, advanced settings, we're going to have this data center URL. You'll notice there's lots of different URLs in here. But the one that we want is this guy here, this Virtual Center Vim API. You've probably seen it put into other integrations. So just make sure that this is the same setting that you're using for ServiceNow. Okay, if I've done all that correctly, I should be able to now add VMware to my cloud account. And here you can see we've discovered against AWS, we've discovered against Azure. We're going to add one more data center. This time it's vCenter. We have our service account, and now I'm going to discover my vCenter. So this is all working through a mid server that I have running in the background. Let's see if I can get it out of screensaver mode. So you can see that it's working against the local vCenter. vSphere cloud type. So I only have one data center in that vCenter. Again, not terribly creative, it's a default setup. And as I come down here to do a discovery, it's going to tell me everything that I have running in there. So this has been the setup for a cloud account. Hopefully you've taken away something useful here. So if we've done everything right, we should now be able to use and deploy into this cloud account into all 3 of our cloud data centers. So that's pretty cool. In our next video, we'll talk about designs and how to do that. Thanks.